So, welcome to Gunfather Milsim live Q&A. Today, I kind of want to focus the discussion on more airsoft game adminning, hosting games, putting on games, stuff like that. At least for a little while, and maybe open it up to other questions later. Why am I talking about hosting games? I think that's pretty simple because if nobody's hosting games, we don't have a sport. You can only do so much, buying guns and shoot them in your backyard. Honestly, if no one hosts games for other people to attend, there is no airsoft, there is no sport, and there is no community. And in my local community, we've had times in the past where we had plenty of fields, and then for whatever reason, we just started losing the fields one by one until we had no fields. And the community, when there's no place to play, dries up real quick. I had to run out and find some new landowners that would let us play, and that's why I started hosting games. That was probably back in about 2012, 2013. I probably got out of hosting games in about 2017 was probably the last time I did it, because there were just other venues started hosting airsoft games, and I didn't have to do it anymore. And it's a lot of work, and I would rather just play. But in the time that I was hosting games, I learned quite a bit about it. And I think I was pretty good at putting on quality games, whether it be skirmishes or ops. I think I put on like 4 or 5 ops. And the biggest op we put on was a 2-day op, and it was like 150 players. So which is, in the grand scheme of things, not huge, but it was a pretty good op, in my opinion. And it went pretty smooth. And I learned a lot from my mistakes. And I was hoping to kind of spend some time and share some of that with everybody here. So first off, your main concern is where are you going to play? That's step one. You got to find a location. Without a location, you got nothing. And that's really the biggest hurdle to get over is where are you going to do this? The first thing you want to do is find a location. Okay. You got to find a landowner. You got to approach the landowner or property owner. Everything goes smoother when you have an in. Okay. When you have somebody who's already friends with that landowner, maybe it's their uncle, their dad, I don't know, a long friend, whatever. If you have an in with them and you're not just cold calling them, you'll have a lot more success. When you just cold call them, your chance of success is very low, especially with airsoft, because they're going to think that there's a lot of liability risk on their part for letting you play there. And depending on where you're at, that may or may not be true. Where I live in Nebraska, there's this thing called Nebraska Recreational Liability Act, which basically means if you're doing something that's inherently dangerous on somebody's property, and you like driving a 4-wheeler, for example, and you get hurt doing that dangerous activity, the landowner isn't liable for you getting hurt because you're the one that was doing the stupid activity. To be clear, this doesn't indemnify the landowner from like obvious issues on their property that would be dangerous. Like, let's say, I don't know, they had a bunch of bear traps that were set lying out. I know it's a stupid example, but it's one that comes to mind. If there was something like that people could get hurt on, they'd obviously be liable for something that would be overly obvious. But if they're just doing a regular activity, and our statute actually includes paintball, is what it says in the statute. It doesn't say airsoft specifically, but it lists a lot of activities, and I would say or similar activities. So it would be covered under that. So I guess what I'm saying is be armed with the knowledge of your local laws and local ordinances regarding liability and recreational activity like that. So when the landowner is going to ask you, am I going to get sued? And that's the first thing you got to get, be ready to address is that question is, well, here's what's going on as far as lawsuits go or the possibility of lawsuits. The next thing you want to do is have a waiver of some kind. Okay. So understand that like in my state, the Recreational Liability Act, although that will protect the landowner, it does not protect me, the person who's putting on the game. Okay. The person who's hosting the game. And so the first thing I need to do is get a waiver. Does somebody signing a liability waiver keep them from being able to sue you? No. You can sue anybody for anything at any time. Okay. What it basically does, it's an acknowledgement by the player that they're engaging in a dangerous activity that can potentially cause injury if they don't follow your safety rules. That's it. It's the acknowledgement that this is dangerous. And so if they do get injured and they sue you later, they can't go in front of the judge and say, well, I didn't know I was going to get shot at by BBs. No, clearly you read the waiver, you signed the waiver, and here it is right here. You acknowledge that it's dangerous and you could get injured. So the big issue I always had with waivers was minors, because minors can't sign away their liability, and their parents will sue you. If their parent, like, they're going to always say, well, I didn't know little Timmy was playing Airsoft today here, and then he got hurt, and now I'm going to sue you because he got a tooth knocked out by a BB. And I always required, if you were under 18, either your parent had to be there, I had to meet your parent, and you would sign it, or you get it notarized at a bank, and the notary would notarize your parent's signature. That was also acceptable. I got a lot of grief from younger players on it. I didn't give a shit. My lower limit for players was 14 years old. Then I changed it to 16. And near the end there, I only hosted games for 18 and older because I was tired of messing around with juveniles because they were just too much trouble. And I would rather have a game of 20 adults than a game of 40 people with a bunch of juveniles in there that I got to mess around with liability and crap. So I took my waiver. I had my attorney write up my waiver. I'm not baller. That's not why I have an attorney. I just happen to have one. You can have an attorney too. Just look one up in the phone book or befriend one or whatever. Legal fees are a little expensive. You could probably paying an attorney to write up a waiver for you would probably cost you $200 or $300. It's really not that expensive compared to the cost of potentially not having one. So, all that waiver liability stuff is cheap on the front end. It's a little bit of, it's one of those things that an ounce of prevention is a pound of cure. You're just much better off getting ahead of it, meeting up with your attorney, getting a waiver. Once again, it won't stop you from getting sued, but it definitely puts the ball in the other person's court to prove that you screwed up. So just because you have a waiver doesn't mean that you as a game planner are indemnified from putting on a safe game and having a safe play environment. You can be grossly negligent in that duty and still get sued and still lose. Okay. And here's an example. If I give you this waiver and you read it and you acknowledge it, yeah, I'm going to engage in this dangerous sport because I can get hurt, getting hit by a BB or whatever. And then I, as a game organizer, do nothing to mitigate that danger, as in I don't have any requirements for safety goggles. I don't have a safety briefing. I don't do a chrono. I don't have admins on the field. Any number of things. I don't have set boundaries. Any of those things that if I don't do that and you get hurt, I can't just say, well, I signed a waiver. No, I didn't do my job. I didn't provide you with a safe play environment. Okay. And that is your number one goal as a game admin or a game organizer, is everyone's safety. Number two is fun. You want everybody to have fun, but number one, hands down, has got to be everyone's safety. It's got to be. Okay. So here's the one. That's the main issue I see a lot of young game organizers, is they just want to have fun and play Airsoft with their friends. And I totally get that. But the issue they run into is they just get lax on all the safety rules. They have an ineffective or just short safety brief or no safety brief. They let people wear goggles that aren't shatterproof, ANSI rated. They don't do a chrono. They let their buddies run hot guns because they want to run hot guns. That's a huge one. And if that gets found out, people get hurt, it's on you, and you're going to get sued. And you deserve to get sued, honestly, because you're a fucking idiot. Additionally, the play area has to be safe, and the objectives have to be reasonably safe. I can't put a flag up on top of a cliff and say, hey, climb up that damn cliff and get that flag, even though if there's no equipment there to protect you, and if you fall from that cliff, you'll clearly get injured. Just because you signed a waiver, that doesn't keep me from getting sued because I sent people up there. I said, oh yeah, go up that cliff. No, it's on you. And when we used to find a field, we'd get a good landowner and we would set it up to play. We'd walk that whole field looking for any safety issues. And sometimes we'd run into like old barbed wire fences that had been knocked down and that were like 4 inches off the ground and were a huge tripping hazard. And we'd go to the landowner and say, hey, you got this old barbed wire fence here. Do you mind if we remove it? They'd always let us. They just never got around to it, or they were lazy. We're making an improvement on their property. They go, oh, yeah, absolutely. Cut that out. Yeah, we bring the bolt cutters, we cut all the wire, and we would cut that wire fence out of there because it's on us. It's not on the landowner. It's on us. That'd be a safe environment. One more note on safety, or on your safety brief. If somebody shows up late to the game, if you're going to allow that and you're going to allow them to play, it's on you to make sure they get a safety brief, or send an admin over there to have a one-on-one safety brief with that player. Otherwise, they can say, well, I was never briefed on that, and I just did whatever I wanted, and then I hurt somebody, and it's on him. You have to protect yourself from liability. It just is what it is. It's also you have to make sure you're providing a safe environment for everyone. Kind of a quick note on landowners. The arrangement I always had. Sorry, I'm trying to read this stuff coming up here in the chat. I promise I'll get back to it. Part of the thing with landowners is that you got to give them something for their time. Okay. I generally, this was a couple of years ago, I would pay my landowners $5 a head. Okay. And I think I would charge like $8 to play, and then the $5 would go to the landowner. And if I usually have like 30 to 40 players, so he'd make $150 off his afternoon from his property. Most landowners, that's really not really worth the time. It's not that great, but it's something. You got to give them something, or there's no motivation for them to let you play there. Then on your side, if you take income, and here's something I did probably incorrectly. If you take income, then you're providing a service, and then you need insurance. Okay. You should probably have insurance anyway. You can call any insurance agent, and if they don't know, they will connect you to somebody. All the big insurance companies have policies for airsoft events. It's common enough, airsoft or paintball events, that they have that policy. You're going to find it's pretty expensive for what you're doing. It'll be, I don't know, a couple $1,000 a year. And it's hard to do like one event, like just one weekend or just one day. They're going to want to do a whole policy. And it's kind of a lot of work. Here's how I avoided it, in my opinion, and I was probably wrong, but luckily I never got sued, is I wouldn't take income. I would just take, so the $3 I just put in a fund, and that fund would be in a separate bank account. And from that money, I would buy props and just crap for putting on games. And I never actually took any income from it. Kept it all separate from my regular, bank accounts. In my opinion, and in the opinion of my attorney, that added a layer of safety and security, because I was basically doing things nonprofit. Didn't mean I couldn't get sued, but the size of the games I was putting on and the size of our community at the time, I ended up not getting liability insurance. In retrospect, probably should have, but if I'd done that, we wouldn't have been playing. So it is what it is. A way around the liability insurance is to find a paintball field or some other place that already has insurance. I remember there was a kind of like a Christian camp, and they had a very sizable liability policy that we would operate under their liability policy when we played airsoft on their property. And that all worked out copacetic for everybody. That was the big 150 person op I put on. That was underneath that policy. And I wanted insurance on that one because it was just the biggest event I'd ever did. And I was it was just a lot of liabilities. It's not like a 30 person game playing in a little forest. The other thing is when you host a game, you have to have a sign-in sheet. Okay. Why? Because you got to know who's there. You got to know that they've signed a waiver, and you got to know what they paid. And then if they try to sue you later, somebody tries to say, hey, my little Timmy was there, you can get the sign-up sheet and go, no, he wasn't. You got to have some sort of accountability of who was and wasn't there, and who did and did not sign their waiver, and who was and was not present for the safety brief. Okay. I mean, this is basic stuff, but a lot of people get lazy on it, and they just want people to show up and play. And I get it. You just want to have fun with your friends. But when you're taking on the responsibility for everybody's safety, because you are the game organizer, you really got to take the time to do these steps correctly. And it's not that hard if you do it correctly and set the standard early. And the reason, once again, I'm bringing all this up is if nobody's putting on games, then we don't have a hobby. And paintball fields right now, a lot of them, I'm probably going to piss some people off. Paintball has been dying on the vine for like 15 years. Okay. It's just slowly dying. It's just too expensive to play, and it's going away. Airsoft is just kind of hanging on, was big growing, and it got to 2012, kind of peaked, went down, and now it's just kind of hanging on, just kind of steady, which is fine. The reason paintball places don't want airsoft players to play there is because paintball places make most of their money off field paint, which is field paint's ridiculously overpriced, but all paintball is overpriced. It's basically 5 cents a shot. Okay. Can you imagine if our BBs were 5 cents a shot? No one would play. That's the big advantage of airsoft. It's cheaper. But since they don't make that money on paint, they're going to give you the leftovers, the leftover field that none of the paintball players are using, or a leftover time where there's no paintballers there because they make more money off paintballers. It is what it is. We can't argue our way around that. It doesn't mean they can't make money off airsoft players. They can. There's currently two, where I'm at, there's two paintball places that let us play. There's Husker Paintball and CJ's Paintball. And they both charge the same, $20. So we pay our $20 and we get to play all day. For what it's worth, they're both very accommodating to us. They're both excellent organizations, and I'm glad they're there, because now if anybody gets hurt, it falls under their liability policy, and it's not on any of the game organizers. That is definitely the better way to do it. Okay.